Good afternoon, all of you. Sorry to have kept you waiting. I was just a little unwell today, but I believe that it's better to see you than not to see you. So maybe 15 minutes late is okay. Let's see this. So yesterday we were talking about things on green revolution and then related to the evergreen revolution. Today what we do, we'll begin talking on the last topic on agriculture, that is capital formation in agriculture. Now, there is a particular way to look at capital formation in agriculture. The particular way to look at it is the role of public expenditure or public investment in agriculture. Because if you ask me, that is how I expect them to ask you a question. All right, that what is the role of public investment in agriculture? So the discussion I will do with you, and I'll make you write few things. Few things are in your notes. I am not reading from your notes at the moment because there is nothing big that you need to understand there. But I will borrow from your notes few points. Pages 28 and 29, evaluation of public investment in agriculture. So I will be discussing that with you, but I'll give you some of, like your notes ends at 1990. I will take you there after also. All right, I can't leave this topic for India after 91. So what we will do is we will do a complete evaluation, the role of investment and the trends of investment in agriculture till now, rather than stopping in 1991. All right. For other savings and investments, I stopped at 1991. But for agriculture, I'll deliberately take you in here. It's hardly a half an hour debate, so let's finish it at one go. So, when we look at investment in agriculture, when we look at investment in agriculture, as I told you, investment is capital formation. So when we look at investment in agriculture or capital formation in agriculture, it's in the form of investment on the field and it's in the form of investments in general for people. All right, for example, investments can include irrigation facility development, investments can include storage capacity development, investment can include road, rail connectivity. It can include electrification. It can include it's that kind of a day for me. You wait on that. अच्छा. All right. So आप लिख सकते हैं जरूर. So it can include crop protection activity. Crop protection like making fences to make sure that animal intrusion and all we can save ourselves from. So crop protection activity. It can also include mechanization. It can also include mechanization. Mechanization like buying a tractor or setting up a harvester or making sure there are machines as threshers. All that is mechanization. So it can also include mechanization. Okay. Doesn't matter, it's all wiped out, but I'm sure you have it with yourself. So include mechanization, and it includes development of marketing infrastructure, development of marketing infrastructure, the way we talked about, say, an APMC market and so on. So development of marketing infrastructure includes that. So agricultural investments, now see, many of these investments can be done by private sector, many of these investments can be done by public sector, and many of these investments can be done by both. All right, like some investments can be private sector led investment, some can be public, some can be both. Sometimes when you see data on it, क्योंकि आप Google search कर सकते हैं जब इसको लेकर, Google search में आपको थोड़े अलग data मिल सकते हैं कभी-कभी. You might get some other data, because many times when people talk about public agricultural investment, they do not consider investment in road or railway or electrification or storehouse creation by government as investment in agriculture. They only focus upon irrigation facility and distributional development facilities and maybe electrification to some extent. So sometimes public investment in agriculture is underestimated. So be careful. If you see a place where they show that public investment in agriculture has been lesser and private investment has been more, and all across all the days, be careful. That implies they are mainly talking about ignoring the infrastructure and other public investments in agriculture. So that ignorance should be kept in mind. All right. Now, when we look at trends in investment, so if you look into your notes again, till 1990, I have given you the trends in that. So if you could just take up your notes, page number 28. Thank you. Good afternoon, all of you joining me now. Fair enough, Divyanshi. Divyanshi is saying even board doesn't want us to study today. Second green revolution is evergreen revolution, Tushar. It's a process that has to begin, Sujoy. All right, let's see this. Now see the initial days in India, if you see the pre-1991 period, I want you to read or look into the notes from second line. From 1950 to 1960, canal irrigation and rural transport was focused upon. All right, that was 1950 to 60 period. Big dams and developing roads, developing railway connectivity. That is where the focus area was. So canal irrigation and rural transport was focused upon, which continued in the next decade with investments also in power generation. So 50 to 70, if you want me to qualify for you, it was mostly about public investment in infrastructure and public investment in dam building and all. All right, so public investments in road, railway, and dam construction with electrification. This was 1950 to 1970. Then in the 70s, public investment was in the same sectors. Now see, road, railway, dam building, electrification, public investment remained in same sectors in 1970s. But now, by the middle of 1970s, private sector had also started becoming relatively richer. Green revolution had started spreading. People were becoming more confident about extra money they could earn from agriculture. So private investment also started becoming prominent. All right, mid 70s के बाद private sector की importance बढ़ने लग गई क्योंकि थोड़ा लोग rich होने लग गए और उन्हें investments के return नजर आने लगे. All right, so in real sense, investment started picking up in agriculture in India after mid 1970s. So see, private investments also cropped up in soil conservation techniques, ground leveling. Ground leveling is land leveling, that is mixing of soil. Mixing humus content with other things. That is ground leveling, mixing of soil to make soil more fertile. And mechanization, like tractors and all, machine purchase. Now, this was because new technology was coming to India and government was giving some credit now to the farmers, so regional rural banks, and then priority sector lending through the public sector banks. All that meant finance was available, so farmers could work a little bit more on private investment generation in agriculture. This was 1970s. Then, and I've given you the same thing, the public investment mainly in the field of transportation, electricity, and canal. Now see, a new trend was observed with public investment spreading into developing storage facilities. So there were public warehouses which were constructed for the first time in India in 1970s and thereafter. Public warehouses constructed for the first time in India in 1970s and thereafter. These were done mainly post Green Revolution and especially after government established Food Corporation of India in 1965. सरकार ने 1965 में फूड कॉरपोरेशन ऑफ इंडिया बनाया 1965-66 से पब्लिक डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन सिस्टम का सिस्टम शुरू किया सो वंस वी स्टार्टेड विद पीडीएस and Food Corporation of India, there was more and more warehousing and storage capacity development on government's account. Government started developing these big storehouses. So this was one source of investment. Credit market investment, what was that? Setting up institutions like regional rural banks, NABARD. You know, these are setting up of institutions. So credit market investment. And developing rural marketing structure, some part of it I was telling you yesterday, like setting up APMC markets, setting up GRAM, setting up mandis. So that was about setting up rural investment markets to make sure that, okay, there are spaces created, storehouses created, measurement facilities given, and so on for purpose of marketing facility to the farmers. This was 1980s now. All right, that with the spread of Green Revolution, beginning of Yellow Revolution, spread of White Revolution, now agriculture, the public investment was changing its scope. तो शुरुआत का इन्वेस्टमेंट किधर था सरकार का? Towards roads, railways, towards connectivity, and towards electrification and big dams. Mid 70s onwards starts changing, so these things remain there. But apart from that, it was more about storehouses and more about institutions created with structure of those institutions in order to make sure that agriculture can be made more productive. Now, between 1980 to 2005, okay, so now I'm giving you some numbers here. आप कुछ बातें लिखें यहाँ, you will get the point. You write, and I will prefer if you write it on a piece of paper because I'm going to make you write many things. Like आपका जो notes हैं उसके पेज छोटे पड़ जाएंगे, फिर आप बोलोगे तो मैं चाहता हूँ कि ये सब ना हो, इसलिए पहले ही बता देता हूँ कि आप पेपर पे ही लिखें तो बेहतर है. I'm going to make you write a lot of things at the moment. So you take this up, you write, from 1950 to 1965, from 1950 to 1965, agricultural growth was recorded at less than 2.5% per annum, full stop. It was 2.7% in the first 5-year plan. It was 2.7% in the first 5-year plan, but declined to below 2% per annum by third 5-year plan. Full stop. This was mainly due to poor technology, less institutional support, and lack of knowledge among farmers. Full stop. Investment as a percentage of investment as a percentage of agricultural GDP. I can believe you understand the language. This is not investment as a percentage of GDP. This is investment as a percentage of agricultural GDP. So investment as a percentage of agricultural GDP remained below 2% per annum, comma, almost all of it contributed by government. Change the paragraph and write, between 1966 to 1980, agricultural sector between 1966 to 1980, agricultural sector recorded a growth of 3.4% per annum, comma, mainly backed by the spread of BACKED, backed बोल रहा हूं मैं, mainly backed by the spread of green revolution and white revolution. Full stop. Investment in agriculture increased to 5% of agricultural GDP. Investment in agriculture increased to 5% of agricultural GDP, comma, out of which 3.5% was by government and the rest by private sector. Change the paragraph again. Agriculture recorded a significant increase in growth rate between 1980, I'm repeating myself, agriculture recorded a significant increase in growth rate between 1980 to 1990 at 3.8% per annum, 3.8% per annum, in spite of two successive droughts, in spite of two successive droughts in 1986 and 1987. Two successive droughts in 1986 and 1987. In fact, in 1986 and 87, agricultural growth was recorded at 0.4%, but in the other years it was so high that the agricultural growth average remained 3.8%. You write, investment in this decade jumped to 8% of agricultural GDP, 8% of agricultural GDP, comma, out of which 2% was by private sector and 6% by public sector, implying that 75% of total investment in agriculture in 1980s was by public sector. Remember, there were days when in 80s when government's focus was mostly on investment and less on subsidies. It was not that we were not giving any subsidies, we were giving subsidies, but investment became a driving force. All right, that investment became a factor where more and more inputs started coming in. So government would make small dams, large dams, government would be making storage capacities, government would be developing connectivity, so on and so forth. All right. I'm telling this because of a reason. When investment remains your focal point, then the gains from investment will be for everyone. As in, even if I am a small farmer, if you give a good irrigation facility, I'm gaining. If you give a good storage facility, I'm gaining. I don't have to buy these things from the market. If you give a good market connectivity, I'm gaining. You understand that? So even as a small farmer, I'm gaining. If somebody is a rich farmer, big farmer, they are also gaining. So the distribution is more equitable. But when you gradually shift to subsidies, and you start giving a fertilizer subsidy more and more, and you start giving an irrigation subsidy more and more, and you start giving an MSP more and more, then it is definitely tilted in the favor of relatively larger farmers, because they will be the ones who will use more fertilizers, and they will be the ones who will use more electricity. They will be the ones who will have more surplus to sell to the market. And this is India's agriculture story, which I will complete when I'm teaching you India after 91. But I'm just putting the input in your mind right now, that this is India's agricultural story, where the farming distress started becoming more and more evident after 1990s. That we made agriculture a risky story. We made agriculture a system where farmers had to borrow a lot to buy their inputs. And then the government said, we will give you a high MSP. But the problem is that if my production goes bad, or for some reason if the product prices go down, I will be badly indebted. So this is something which we have to take care of, that how do we reduce farm indebtedness? किसान पर जो कर्ज का बोझ है वो कैसे कम करें? So how do we reduce farm indebtedness? How do we make sure that farmers are made more productive? How do we make sure that farmers get better value for what they produce? You understand that? So this is something if we can work upon, and how do we work upon it, what all will be needed, is a discussion we will do in India after 91. But this is something we work upon. We will be in a much better space compared to what we see right now. But it started in the early 90s till late 80s. It was still looking kind of okay. Yes, yes. Okay, it's actually when you say subsidy, maybe subsidy is worse, and why does it go worse? Say for a second. Again, when I'll teach you India after 91, I'll bring it across. But one big reason is a lot of corruption and siphoning out. So if I am giving 1 lakh crore subsidy and 60,000 crore subsidy is not reaching the farmer. Another is if it doesn't get siphoned out, again I repeat, the big farmers are in a better position to get it. Like if somebody wants to give more subsidy, make it a direct benefit transfer and divide it equally among people. That will still be a good idea. Like if we can develop a PM Kisan and make it into a method where we can give it even to the landless farmers and to tenant farmers. And if we can do that, and maybe divide it among 18 crore agricultural households, say 30,000 rupees each per annum, that will still make a system where everybody gets some money. Right now what's happening is that the deprived are severely deprived. No, you know what happens with infrastructure development? I'm sorry. And it's not only infrastructure development, it includes extension services, it includes farmers training. So what that does is it increases the productivity of the farmer. And if you make the farmer more productive, then you make them more capable. Then they can develop their own investment processes. Yes, but again, you know why that was happening? Because there was no method to arrange the small farmers as a group, or there was no method to educate them about their empowerment. So finally, it boils down to how we educate them about extension services, empower them through that, and do investments to upgrade them at a personal level. Like imagine if I create an irrigation facility. Now that irrigation facility is taking water to everybody's land. It's because of the administrative fallacies that we have. All right, if we can improve upon the administration and target things better, then not a problem. All right, that is the point here. I had one more hand raised. Yes, yes. Yes. See, how you design the subsidy matters a lot as to who will get uplifted. You know, when we say that we want to uplift our small farmers, if we want to uplift our small farmers, we will have to design the subsidy so that they get it. You know, yeah, make it unpopular for the rich to take it. Imagine, I'll give you a separate example, but I hope it will make sense to you. So say when we say that we want to give medicine subsidy to the poor. So Pradhan Mantri Jan Aushadhi store should not be opened up at Old Rajendra Nagar. It should be opened up in a slum. And that will help the poor more, and the rich will never take the pain of walking through the slum to get medicine 30% lesser. And if they want it, let them take the pain at least. But if I set up a Pradhan Mantri Jan Aushadhi store in the middle of a posh area of Delhi, then obviously the rich will get benefited by that. And I can tell you a number of such steps. Yeah. Yeah. No, that is what. So exclusivity ends only when you make it reach out to the poor. And again, as I was discussing earlier, important is educate the people about their rights and educate the administration that they are meant to serve the rights of the people, not to serve the rights of the rich alone. It takes time. It will take time. It has taken some time in India. But gradually, as we keep educating ourselves about it, telling ourselves, but education means what? That we tell ourselves that, look, this is what I am for. So when we tell ourselves that, we get programmed to achieve that. You know, that is the idea. Yes. Not utilizing. No, not legalizing MSP is separate. That I will discuss with you after when I discuss India after 1991. But important is again to make sure that whatever subsidy you are promising the farmers, you deliver them well. अब जैसे आपके एक मित्र पूछते हैं ऑनलाइन सब्सिडी बड़े किसान को कैसे मदद करती है? भाई तुम्हारे पास 100 एकड़ जमीन है, मेरे पास 5 एकड़ जमीन है, कौन ज्यादा फर्टिलाइजर यूज करेगा? अपने ग्रे मैटर को हिलाना चाहिए कभी कभी. You know? मैं मानता हूं तुम आईएएस बन के उसका बहुत इस्तेमाल करना है तो अभी बचाना चाह रहे हो, लेकिन थोड़ा इस्तेमाल जरूर करना चाहिए कि भाई एक one person has 100 acre land, another person has 5 acre land. Who will use more fertilizer? Who will extract more water? Who will sell more crop to the government? It's designed in the favor of the rich. You know, how will a poor sell more? It's unfathomable. जब हम बोलते हैं कॉलेज एजुकेशन फ्री, एक दिन कोई ट्विटर पे मुझे पकड़े हुए थे कि आप चाहते हैं जो, क्योंकि पिक्चर आई थी उस बीच में कोई ट्यूशन को लेकर, वो सुपर 30 को लेकर, तो उस पर लोगों ने बोला आप गरीब बच्चों को पढ़ाएंगे तो उनका और भला होगा. मैं बोला मुझे गरीब ग्रेजुएट ला दो बहुत सारे, मैं पढ़ा दूंगा, क्योंकि जेन्युइनली गरीब इंडिया में ग्रेजुएट नहीं हो पाते हैं, वो बहुत रेयर कमोडिटी है. तो हम खुद को गरीब मानना छोड़ें पहले तो. वी हैव दिस टेंडेंसी इन इंडिया. That middle class people, upper middle class people say we are the poor ones. Poors को ये benefit मिलना चाहिए, मैं ही गरीब हूँ. Apply yourself. You know, we are not the poor. Graduates don't become poor, remain poor, are not poors of India. And God willing, if you are a graduate, that doesn't keep you a poor in India. Because you are one of the rare things of India. 6% of the whole population. That makes you an elite. और अगर सच पूछो मुझसे इन बातों पर भी कि डेवलपमेंट एक ग्रेजुएट होने के बाद कैसे करनी चाहिए, सेल्फ सफिशिएंसी से. ये मैं हमेशा बोलता हूं. अगर आपके कोई मित्र भी हैं तो उनको बोलिए. मदद करते हैं हम लोग भी, कोशिश रहती है, उसमें जाऊंगा भी नहीं, बिकॉज अगर आप किसी की हेल्प करते हैं तो वो पब्लिकली बोलना नहीं चाहिए. बट आप सोच के देखिए, अगर मैं ग्रेजुएट हूं, इफ आई एम अ ग्रेजुएट, आई विल सर्च अ जॉब. आई एम अ 22-year-old, say 21-year-old, I'll take a job, I'll work in that, 10,000-15,000 rupees per month. I can manage it. I can tell you with assurance. I will live life like a poor. I will spend 6,000-7,000 rupees a month. I'm saving 7,000-8,000 rupees a month. I will save it for 3 good years. I have saved around 3 lakh rupees in my pocket. Now I leave my job and I have 1 year possibility of preparing for this exam, sometimes 1.5 years, and I'm still 25. If I give, or 24. If I give myself 2 more years, I will save 5 lakh rupees now, plus the interest, which will mean that now I have the capacity to work for this exam for 2 to 3 years more, sustaining at 10,000-12,000 rupees per month, take a coaching also and pay 1.5 lakh rupees to that coaching, and tell them I don't need your subsidy, take it from me, and maybe qualify this exam, God willing, at the age of 28 or 29, and become a self-made IAS officer. That is what you want. I expect the youth of India to think like. And I'm not saying it not having practiced it. I have practiced it in my life, then saying this to you. मुझे 12वीं में किसी ने बहुत जबरदस्त बेइज्जती कर दी थी. अब वो मेरे वाइफ हैं, पर बहुत जोरदार बेइज्जती की थी मेरी. मैं गाड़ी लेकर गया था उनको लेने के लिए, और उन्होंने कह दिया तुम्हारी औकात तो इसमें पेट्रोल डलवाने की नहीं है. तो मुझे सच में इट मेड मी थिंक कि मेरी औकात क्या है. क्योंकि बात तो सही है, अगर पापा घर से निकाल दें मैं तो इसमें पेट्रोल भी नहीं डलवा सकता. मैं तो शायद इसका ड्राइवर भी नहीं बन सकता. And then from graduation first year, I started tutoring students. And since then, I have been tutoring. So, you know, वही life बन गई. फिर आज भी tuitions दे रहा हूँ. Graduation first year से tuition देता चला आ रहा हूँ. And Delhi is a very kind space. They pay you very well. So I remember in my graduation first year, I used to take 2 tuitions of maths to 12th standard children, and they would pay me 150 rupees per hour each. तो 300 रुपए मिल जाते थे 2 घंटे खर्च करने के, और वो भी alternate day पे. तो मेरे लिए बड़ी अच्छी लाइफ थी. 3500 रुपए में उस जमाने में तो हम लोग किंग लाइफ लीड करते थे. 3500 वुड बी अ ह्यूज मनी. मैं बहुत पहले की बात कर रहा हूँ, 91, 92. हड़प्पा के लोग घूमते थे उस समय, 92, 93 रादर. You know, मोहनजोदड़ो के लोग आसपास ही रहते थे. You know, those days. But you know, that taught me many things, no doubt. But it also taught me how you can sustain yourself. Even the GRE I wrote was with my own money. और चूंकि आपसे आज बातचीत कर रहा हूँ तो एक और ये बात भी बताता हूँ, तुम्हें prelims में मदद कर सकती है शायद. When I was writing my GRE, in our days they used to be different. I have already told you, हड़प्पा मोहनजोदड़ो days. तो उस समय GRE 2400 मार्क्स का होता था. 800 English, 800 logical reasoning, and 800 quant mathematics. And being a typical Indian student, I was very confident that quant and reasoning, I'll score my 1600 on 1600. English, maybe I'll score a 750, so I'll have a 2350, and that will get me a good university and a good scholarship. Now I'm writing this paper. My quant had gone the way I would have liked, and I was very happy. Now I'm writing this reasoning part, and I'm sure those of you who have written these exams, you know that they give you a question on the screen, and if you solve the question correctly, the next one is a little tougher. And if you solve it incorrectly, the next one is a little easier. Now, I was doing this, and we were one of the first batches to take this online. हमारे से पहले नहीं तो ऑफलाइन GRE होती थी. तो लिख रहे हैं. अब एक क्वेश्चन ब्लिंक कर रहा है मेरे आगे रीजनिंग में, and I was not sure about its answer. Now, within 50 seconds, my mind is going all sorts of circle. So I am thinking, oh, I don't know this answer fully well. My 800 on 800 is getting compromised in reasoning. Now there is no point writing this exam, because now in English, in any case, I will not get 800. And if my score is below 2350, then good scholarship from a top 10 university is impossible. So let's do one thing. Let's write it again. एक बार और date ले लेते हैं और इस exam को यही छोड़ते हैं. 1 minute and all this is spinning in my mind, and there is a question blinking in front of me. The only reason I kept writing that exam was they used to charge $120 in those days for writing this GRE exam, which meant that 5,000 rupees I had spent on it, you know, in conversion rate of around 35-40 per dollar. तो 5,000 रुपए मेरे अपने लगे थे. तो मेरे मन में यही आया कि चलो पैसे तो अपने खर्च कर दिए हैं, तो कुछ नहीं करते, लिख ही देते हैं इस एग्जाम को, जो आएगा देख लेंगे, इसको प्रैक्टिस टेस्ट मान के लिखते हैं. So that was my mindset after that, that okay, this is a practice test I am writing. I will try excelling in it, but then I will take another date and write another exam and see through things. And you know, I actually scored an 800 on 800 in that exam, in that reasoning. I finally scored a 2360, which God knows whether I would have again scored also or not. You know, honestly speaking, मुझे क्या पता दूसरी बार में नहीं आता शायद, क्योंकि आपके सक्सेस स्टोरी आने के लिए बहुत चीज़ों का सेट होना पड़ता है, उसमें लक भी एक इंपॉर्टेंट पार्ट है. तो फ्लूक था वो एक टू सम एक्सटेंट, हो गया बस इसीलिए लेकिन दे रहा था. तुम्हें क्यों कह रहा हूँ, कभी कभी जब प्रीलिम्स भी देते रहोगे तो ऐसे ख्याल आते हैं मन में, 2 नहीं आ रहे, 3 नहीं आ रहे, 4 नहीं आ रहे, वो लगता है मेरा ही प्रीलिम्स खराब हो रहा है. बोलो कोई बात नहीं है, दे के तो जाएंगे यहाँ से. विभास स्टोरी भी सुना रहा था, मेरे साथ भी कुछ ऐसा ही होगा. सो यू सिट डाउन, राइट इट अप एंड यू विल सी दैट फाइनली इट वर्क्स आउट, नो डाउट. तो इसलिए आपसे कहता हूँ दैट अगर कोई बोलते हैं मैं ग्रेजुएट होकर गरीब हूँ, आई डोंट इवन फील एंग्री, आई फील पिटी अबाउट द पर्सन. कि भारत में हैं, ग्रेजुएट हैं और बोलते हैं मैं गरीब हूँ. तुम ग्रेजुएट हो, वही तुम्हारी अमीरी है. उसको यूज करने आना चाहिए और बैक बेंड करने आना चाहिए, ये बहुत जरूरी है. व्हेन यू बेंड योर बैक यू डू थिंग्स वेल. तो वो जरूर करो कि बैक बेंड करें, मेहनत करें, ऐसे नहीं छोड़ेंगे किसी चीज को, तो वो उससे बात बन जाती है. बट एनीवेज, मैं आपको इसलिए बोल रहा हूं कि आईएएस कोचिंग एक लग्जरी है, ये एजुकेशन नहीं है. एजुकेशन तो कॉलेज एजुकेशन है, स्कूल एजुकेशन है. अब वापस अपनी बात पे आता हूं, अगर कॉलेज एजुकेशन हमने फ्री कर रखा है सबके लिए, तो वो तो सबके लिए फ्री हो गया. फिर मेरे बेटे को भी फ्री में मिल रहा है, जो अब स्कूल से कम फीस कॉलेज में देंगे. द फेलो इज पेइंग मोर फी इन स्कूल एंड लेस फी इन द, अभी से and less fee in the college. तो ये हमारा चैलेंज है. You know, that is the point, that when we target a subsidy, rich are in a much better position to take that subsidy if the subsidy is made universal. अगर आप बोलते हैं इन सब के लिए ये सब्सिडी है, तो सब के लिए मतलब तो जो अमीर हैं, जो अपने बच्चे को ट्यूशन पढ़ाएंगे अच्छा, उनके बच्चे अच्छे ट्रेन हुए, बड़े स्कूल में गए, वो तो 98% ला के टॉप कॉलेज में जाएंगे और फीस भी नहीं देंगे, और बाद में निकल के बोलेंगे देश ने क्या किया मेरे लिए. ऐसे बहुत लोगों को मिलता हूं मैं. वी आर हियर ओनली टू पे टैक्सेस, कंट्री डज नथिंग फॉर मी. हमारी पढ़ाई देश ने करा दी भाई, नहीं तो फ्री नहीं पढ़ पाते, उतने पैसे नहीं होते शायद बहुत लोगों के पास, या शायद पेरेंट्स नहीं देते उतने पैसे. ये सोचना जरूरी है ना, दैट वंस वी रियलाइज दैट माय एजुकेशन, एटलीस्ट इफ आई रिकॉल एट दिल्ली स्कूल ऑफ इकोनॉमिक्स आई कुड स्टडी वेल. और जो अभी आपको बोल रहा था बड़ा अच्छे से कि देखो मैं तो अपने आप को फाइनेंस किया, यही कॉलेज की फीस 2 लाख होती तो कहां से अपने आप को फाइनेंस करता. फिर तो बोलता ही पापा को कि दो भाई हेल्प करो, उनके पास भी है नहीं है, वो एक सवाल उठ जाता. तो फ्री का कॉलेज था तो मैं भी पढ़ गया और अपने आप को फाइनेंस कर लिया. लेकिन यही समझा रहा हूं कि मुझे फ्री का कॉलेज नहीं मिलना चाहिए था कानूनी रूप से. So this is the mistake that we do in our subsidy program, and that is where it gets tilted in the favor of the rich. All right, always keep it like that. Anyways, we come back to our current discussion then. Now you take this up. Could you tell me the last line you had written? Yeah, I got it. 6% by the public sector. You write, in the same thing you continue. In this time period, comma, it was also observed that there is rising productivity in agriculture. There is rising productivity in agriculture. Okay, you know, one suggestion that two of your friends give online, one is Divyanshi, another is Sushil, that if we can fix quantity based subsidy or upper limit on subsidy, that can be more equitable. True, if we can fix quantity based subsidy or upper limit on a subsidy, it can be more equitable, assuming that the system will remain honest to the farmers. Because you fix a quantity-based subsidy or an upper limit on the subsidy, and you will have 10 people who will make their cards and collect that subsidy from the system. So if we can make it honest, and that is why I keep insisting that rather than focusing mainly on subsidy, focus on investment, education, and empowerment. Subsidies won't be needed as much, and that will upgrade people. Focus on developing industrialization so that not too many people are there in agriculture. So because remember, development cannot be in silos. ये नहीं होगा कि आप एग्रीकल्चर को डेवलप करा लेंगे बिना इंडस्ट्री के, इंडस्ट्री को डेवलप करा लेंगे बिना सर्विसेज के, सर्विसेज को डेवलप करा लेंगे बिना एग्रीकल्चर के. ये तो सबको एक साथ डेवलप कराएंगे तो ही आपके प्रॉपर डेवलपमेंट होगी. सो इफ वी वांट एग्रीकल्चर टू डू वेल, वी विल हैव टू मेक इंडस्ट्री डू वेल. And industry is a severe missing link in India that is not done well. So, and I'll teach you that, again, you will have to give me time, but understand it like that. So, the solutions are there, and I will be giving you those solutions, and we will be developing it, of course, no doubt. Soil conservation technique means that how do you make sure that you don't have topsoil erosion, like bunding of soil, mulching of soil. इनको गूगल सर्च कर लेना ऋतु, MULCHING मल्चिंग, BUNDING बंडिंग, समझ जाओगे ये टेक्निक से सॉइल कंजर्वेशन के. All right, agricultural GDP means how much of the GDP is contributed by agriculture. In case somebody in the classroom also has that confusion, keep it in mind. So suppose if 100 rupees is GDP and 20 rupees is contributed by agriculture, then 20 rupees is agricultural GDP. All right, that is agricultural GDP. All right. I will be discussing sectoral composition, Sanjana, don't worry. All right, let's see this then. Perfect, Anvesha, thank you. Why can't the government identify small farmers is a true question, but believe me, identification becomes a problem because landholding records themselves are a problem. Understand that. So when you say, why can't the government identify, would you imagine that till 1990s, even people in urban areas could create multiple identities? Till 1990s. अभी तो एक आधार कार्ड बन गया, आधार लिंक्ड अकाउंट हो गया, उस पर भी कुछ लोग गुस्सा भी रहते हैं कि हमारा प्राइवेसी कंट्रोल हो रहा है. ऐसी मजाक कर रहा हूं, but whenever somebody says privacy in India, it brings a smile to my face. We are a complete non-private people. We talk to complete strangers in airplanes and trains. And we tell them all details about us. Where are you going? Where am I going? How old are you? This old I am. How many children do you have? बच्चा साथ में तो बोलता भी नमस्ते करो अंकल, नमस्ते अंकल. Complete stranger. We very well don't even know them. And that is how private we are. And we talk about privacy. It's a very strange feeling I get. कि हम बोलते हैं हमारा प्राइवेसी कॉम्प्रोमाइज हो रहा है. हम बिल्कुल नॉन प्राइवेट लोग हैं. पड़ोसी हैं हमारे, उनके घर में कोई उनका बेटा या बेटी लेट से घर आ रहा है, बिना हिचकिचाहट के उनसे पूछते हैं कल आपका बच्चा लेट से आता दिखा. और जो दूसरे हैं वो भी डांट नहीं रहे, कह रहे ये मेरा प्राइवेट मैटर है, तुम बाहर रहो इससे. वो एक्सप्लेन भी कर रहे हैं, हाँ वो क्या बात है, आजकल जाता है क्लास के लिए. उसी में बातचीत हो रही है, हाँ मैं भी जाता था क्लास में. इतने प्राइवेट लोग हैं हम लोग. एंड वी से आधार विल कॉम्प्रोमाइज आवर प्राइवेसी. वी आर अ प्राइवेसी कॉम्प्रोमाइज्ड पीपल. If you look at privacy, the Occidentals have that concept. I remember very early in my life, 7-8 years of age, I was with my grandfather in UK, and my grandfather we were traveling in a tram. And my grandfather used to be very strict to us in training terms. हमें बड़ा strictly train करते थे. सुबह 4 बजे उठा दिया, वेद पढ़ा रहे हैं, कुरान पढ़ा रहे हैं, उपनिषद पढ़ा रहे हैं, और मीनिंग भी समझाते थे, लेकिन पढ़ाते थे. और 6 बजे अखबार पकड़ा दिए हाथ में कि अब अखबार पढ़ो. So whatever you see in me, blame it on him. Because he developed me for very long. So now, but then as a youngster, I used to resist him a lot as a kid. कि ये कहाँ फंस गया मैं, ये क्या-क्या कराते हैं हमसे. And then once we were going in a tram, and he was sitting, I was sitting this side, and there was a British who was sitting. And as it happens in our country, our initial talk is, where are you going? So my grandfather turns around and says, where are you going? And this fellow turns to him and says, that's none of your business. And I can't tell you, I was gloating by the side. बहुत अच्छा हुआ. आज इनको सुनने को मिला. I came back home, ran to my grandmother, told her, you know what happened today? This fellow had it. He was asking, where are you going? So this is their concept of privacy. So we guys are not private people. We are very public people, community living people. यू नो वी लिव इन द कम्युनिटी. हमारे यहाँ कुछ भी होता है हम बिना कम्युनिटी का सेलिब्रेट नहीं करते, दुख भी नहीं मनाते, हमें सब चीज़ के लिए कम्युनिटी चाहिए. कोई भी बात हो जाए. तो इसीलिए आपको बता रहा हूँ कि हम लोग जब प्राइवेसी की बात, लेकिन आधार के फायदे क्या हुए? एटलीस्ट इट इज गिविंग पीपल अ यूनिक आइडेंटिटी इन इंडिया. Otherwise, I could have been a VIB HASH Vibhash. I could have been another one VIB HAS GHA Jha, so Vibhas Jha, and I could have been another one only Jha. And all these three identities would have been mine. And for all these three, I would have a bank account or I will have an address and so on. तो वो बदलाव है अब इंडिया में. आज से 20-25 साल पहले वो भी नहीं था. सो आइडेंटिटी इन इंडिया becomes quite a challenge, that identify people and know where they are, who they are. So we are overcoming the challenge, no doubt, but it is still a challenge. And then of course the census has to be done, data collection has to be done. That in any case, in the last few years we have gone back on, so maybe we will have to work quite a bit on that. Okay, now you write in the same thing, change the paragraph please. You write, after liberalization till 2004, after liberalization till 2004, comma, investment pattern in agriculture showed a shift away from dominance of public investment to that of private investment. Full stop. Total investment remained stable. Total investment remained stable at 8% to 10%, at 8% to 10% of agricultural GDP. But now 80% of it was done by private sector. 80% of it was done by private sector, while only 20% by public sector. Full stop. This was due to and you take it as A, B, C, D. So this was due to A, government started providing more subsidies in agriculture. B, government's capacity to invest became lesser because under conditions of IMF, it had to keep fiscal deficit in control. Under conditions of IMF, it had to keep fiscal deficit in control. Third, terms of trade had shifted in favor of agriculture, terms of trade had shifted in favor of agriculture, which made policymakers think that investment is not required. I'll tell you what that means. Terms of trade means if you talk about, say, price of agricultural products and price of industrial products. Now, suppose if I am a farmer, I am a producer of agricultural product, net producer, and I will be a net buyer of industrial product. If this terms of trade becomes less than one, it will imply price of agricultural products is lesser than price of industrial product. Then what will mean? What it will mean? It will mean that industrialists will find it cheaper to buy agricultural goods, and that will mean industrial workers are better off compared to agricultural workers. You understand that? अगर मैं agriculture का worker हूँ, मेरे सामान का price कम है, जो मैं produce कर रहा हूँ और जो मैं खरीदता हूँ उसका price ज़्यादा है, तो terms of trade मेरे against हो गए. So if you have this situation, this is terms of trade against agriculture. Terms of trade against agriculture. That is, agricultural goods become cheaper than industrial goods. If the opposite happens, PA by PI greater than 1, it will imply price of agricultural goods more than price of industrial goods. This means terms of trade in favor of agriculture. Terms of trade in favor of agriculture. All right, so terms of trade against agriculture, terms of trade in favor of agriculture. Now please understand what starts happening after 1990. What starts happening is that we start protecting agriculture more and more. We start increasing subsidies in agriculture, which means and then we were making agriculture a high cost, high price system. आप महंगे फर्टिलाइजर यूज करिए, पेस्टिसाइड यूज करिए, आप इरिगेशन खरीदिए, तो आपका कॉस्ट ऑफ प्रोडक्शन बढ़ गया. When you're using costly inputs, your cost of production is high, but then we will compensate you by giving you high MSP. So that made it a high cost, high price system. So price of agricultural goods went up. But what did we do in industries? Opposite. We introduced competition in industry. We allowed FDI and we liberalized industry. So more investment, more entry of competition when price of industrial goods started falling, while price of agricultural goods were rising. So the government policymakers had a feeling that, okay, in any case, farmers are making more than what the industries are, so they don't need major support from us. Whatever they are saving, they will invest. And data-wise, they felt okay because investment in agriculture did not decline. Its composition changed. Do I believe I reach you on the last line I said? That till 1990s, 80 to 90, agriculture was investing 8% of its GDP, out of which 75% was by government, 25% by private sector. Between 1990 to 2005, agriculture kept investing 8% to 10% of GDP. It's just that now 80% was by private sector, 20% by government. So if somebody took a normal record of how much was agricultural investment in India, the record came that it's okay, investment is still the same as earlier, and nobody majorly in those days bothered about the composition change, because don't forget there were days of liberalization and globalization. So people thought it's normal that now the private sector should take the lead and we will do indicative planning and they can develop more investment, not realizing that if the rich invest in in agriculture, or the private investments in agriculture will mean creation of private assets and private property. So if I am creating an irrigation channel, I won't let you share it. It will be mine, it's not public good. If I am creating a storage capacity, it's mine, not for everyone. If government is creating it, it's for everyone. You understand that? If I am creating a road or a connectivity facility, it's mine. It won't be for everyone. So even though government because these were the things that were kept said in those days. I still remember Mr. Chidambaram giving a speech in 1997 as the finance minister, saying that in spite of liberalization, there is no change in agricultural investment. Now, factually, he was not incorrect. He was correct. But the only problem was composition had changed, and that meant that public investment in agriculture, which used to create public goods for people, and that would reduce the cost of production for all, was now getting replaced by private investments, which would make agriculture costlier, more risk-oriented, and more price increase. So that is what we were facing. Now, what was the net result? I hope you get the discussion on that. Yes, yes. Yeah. Absolutely. They should have kept investing more. Absolutely. That's what I'm also telling you. I'm saying that, yeah, so rather use the term policy making fault. All right, that's a better word to use. But it was a fault in policy making that we were ignoring public investment in agriculture. In fact, over this argument, I will prove to you that whenever public investment has fallen in India in agriculture, agricultural growth has slipped. No, no, the investment had increased. The investment had increased. Public investment did not come down significantly. Plus, don't forget GDP was rising. So if the percentage is same as GDP, it means that overall your investments are rising. But composition again is still important because the majority of investment was now done on modern equipments, gadgets, storehouses, connectivity, rather than on public investments which could have reduced the, see what do investments do? When you invest more, you reduce your cost of production by increasing efficiency. But that will happen when everybody gets the share of that investment. And that stopped happening in 90s in India. Imagine, think of Indian agriculture till 80s. Indian agriculture till 80s was a low cost, low price thing, which was helping in keeping inflation in check in India. You understand that? That there would be low cost of production, low risk in doing farming, and low price also. It was not that farmers would get a very high price, but then their cost was low, so profitability remained similar. When we made it a high cost, high price thing, profitability started remaining similar, but now with a lot of risk quotient attached to it. मान लीजिए मैं 5 रुपए का कोई चीज बेच पाता हूँ, जिंदा रह के सुनते रहना मेरी बात. अगर मैं 5 रुपए की कोई बात चीज बेच पाता हूँ और 3 रुपए का मेरा खर्चा है, if I'm selling something for 5 rupees, 3 rupees is my expenditure, my profit margin in that is 2 rupees out of my 3 rupees expenditure. You understand that? So that means my profit margin is say 66%. All right. I change the situation. Now suppose I'm spending something and I'm spending 6 rupees and I am making a profit of 4 rupees by selling the same commodity at 10 rupees. My profit margin is still 66%. But now my costs have doubled, which means my risk of doing business has doubled. And that means that any failure for me now will push me down. My profit margin remains the same. In absolute terms, it may look that 2 rupees have become 4 rupees. But effectively, I was earlier also earning 66%. I'm even today earning 66% of my cost. So important thing is that profit margin in agriculture remained same, but risks became more as we made it costlier with new inputs, less investment, because public investment in road, public investment in irrigation, public investment in storage will mean farmers don't have to buy it, and which reduces the overall cost of doing business. That started taking a back seat, and now there were more investments to buy a tractor, there would be more investments to do a land leveling, there would be more investments to fence your land, and that meant that your cost of production is further rising because you're creating capital goods, but these are capital goods with heavy depreciation at times. You get the story of what I'm trying to tell you? So that was the mistake part, if you ask me. Intentional. Because remember, when you give subsidy, you give instant gratification. When you do investments, there is no instant gratification. आप जब आपके एज में आते हैं ना, तो आप रियलाइज करते हैं कि पापा ने मुझ में इन्वेस्ट किया और मामा जी और चाचा जी तो सब्सिडी दे रहे थे. जब तक हम बचपन में होते हैं तो हमें लगता है मामा जी चाचा जी कितने अच्छे हैं, जब आते हैं कुछ पैसा दे के जाते हैं. ये पापा को देखो, पैसा मांगता हूं 4 सवाल पूछते हैं. क्योंकि वो सब्सिडी नहीं दे रहे थे, इंस्टेंट ग्रेटिफिकेशन नहीं कर रहे थे, लेकिन वो इन्वेस्ट कर रहे थे आप में, जो आपको लॉन्ग टर्म में समझ में आता है कि मैं केपेबल हो गया उनका इन्वेस्टमेंट से। लेकिन शॉर्ट टर्म में तो लगता है कि क्या विलेन आदमी है ये। सो अंडरस्टैंड दैट सरकार को 5 साल में वोट चाहिए वापस, तो सरकार को लगता है दैट ओ इफ आई गिव सब्सिडी आई हैव टू स्पेंड मनी, सो इफ आई गिव सब्सिडी मे बी आई गेट people more pleased. Plus we have a whole ideological system in India which keeps looking at only the expenditure part. कितना खर्चा किया आपने, सब्सिडी कितना दिए। अब सोच के देखिए, पिछले साल, उम्मीद है तुम लोग ये सब पढ़ते होगे, लास्ट ईयर फर्टिलाइजर सब्सिडी वाज 2,25,000 crore in the budget. This year fertilizer subsidy is 1,75,000 crore in the budget. People started screaming from the top, this is anti-farmer, government is reducing subsidy in the budget. This is ridiculous. Last year the subsidy was 2,25,000 crore because the Russia-Ukraine war had resulted in increasing the price of both diammonium phosphate and muriate of potash. This year the war has stabilized. There is no increase in the price of these fertilizers. Why should we give more subsidy? And to top it all, 2017 Economic Survey, Volume 1, Chapter 9, says specifically that out of total subsidy that we give our farmers on fertilizers in India, 60% doesn't reach the small farmers. And 45% doesn't reach farmers at all. और इकोनॉमिक सर्वे ये रिकमेंड कर रहे थे 2017 में कि फर्टिलाइजर सब्सिडी को रैशनलाइज किया जाए, कम किया जाए और धीरे धीरे डायरेक्ट बेनिफिट ट्रांसफर पे शिफ्ट किया जाए। तो एक तरफ ये खोज आ रही है, खबर है, अरविंद सुब्रमण्यम सर लिखते थे उस समय इकोनॉमिक सर्वे, और अभी 2023 में जब सरकार ने कम किया फर्टिलाइजर सब्सिडी, अरविंद सुब्रमण्यम सर ने आर्टिकल लिखा वॉशिंगटन पोस्ट में दैट गवर्नमेंट ऑफ इंडिया इज नॉट डूइंग जस्टिस टू इट्स फार्मर्स। And I can't believe Arvind Subramaniam sir doesn't know his economics. I have been lucky enough to have spent 6 days of my life with him, you know, as a student of course. तो मैं यूएस में थोड़ा कहीं फंस गया था तो सर ने मुझे शरण दे दी थी। बट एनीवेज वो एक अलग कहानी, उसमें जाएंगे नहीं। बट यू नो, तो मैं जानता हूँ उनको इकोनॉमिक्स की समझ जितनी ज़्यादा है, वो मिस्टेक से तो ये बात नहीं लिखेंगे। तो फिर आपके पॉलिटिकल एक्यूमेन आ जाते हैं बीच में कि मैं पॉलिटिकली किसको सपोर्ट करना चाहता हूँ, और जो कॉमन लोग आपको पढ़ रहे हैं वो कंफ्यूज कि भाई ये इतने बड़े इकोनॉमिस्ट कह रहे हैं तो कुछ तो बात होगी इसके पीछे। यही समझा रहा हूँ, ये हमारे गवर्नमेंट के लिए एक बहुत बड़ा एक यू नो ऑप्शनलेस इशू है ये। फिर that if I take the right decision you are damning me, if I take the wrong decision I'm damned anyways. So that is where, and I'm not saying only the current government, when the current people were in opposition they would do some similar things. जब ऑपोजिशन में खुद थे तो ऐसी बातें ही करते थे। तो वो डेमोक्रेसी तो डिबेट की ही बात है, वो ठीक से की जाए तो मामला ठीक निकलेगा। पर आपको यही समझा रहा हूँ कि सरकार अगर पॉलिटिक्स सोचने लग जाए तो राइट पॉलिसीज स्टार्ट टेकिंग अ बीटिंग, बिकॉज गवर्नमेंट इज थिंकिंग अबाउट इट्स वोट एंड दैट सब्सिडी कैन गिव यू मोर इजीली or get you more easily. Investments will take time to fructify. Sometimes people won't even realize that it's somebody else's investment which is benefiting me. That again is a factor there. All right. Yes. Structural. Okay. 75% public, 25% private. 8% में से 6% public, 2% private. All right. Okay. Now, in the same thing you write, fourth point, D. You wrote till C? You write D. Government expenditure on public infrastructure. Government expenditure on public infrastructure became comparatively lesser between 1991 to 2002. Like, remember when I say 91, I mean 91. When I say 2002, I mean 2001, 2. All right, that phase. So 1991 to 2002, which also led to decline I'm sorry, in overall productivity and investment. Sorry. All right. Change your paragraph and write one more line in that. Growth of agricultural GDP growth or agricultural GDP of agricultural GDP was at only 2%, only 2% per annum, 2% per annum, which was one of the lowest recorded by India, one of the lowest recorded by India after Green Revolution. And you know, many economists actually said that the reason that this problem has happened in India is because of low public investment in agriculture. All right. In case there is any issue, understand this is price in agriculture, this is price in industry. If price in agriculture is lesser than price in industry, it means farmers are worse off, industrial workers are better off. All right. And similarly, if price in agriculture is more than price in industry, it means farmers are better off, industrial workers are worse off. And the government was watching this in 1990s, so it thought it's better to invest in that manner and rather give more support to industry rather than agriculture. And that was the reason why investments in agriculture came down. Now I gave it to you for a reason. I'll take a second to understand the perspective. Sometimes in your examination, they can break this whole discussion. So they can either ask you to discuss the role of public investment and private investment in agriculture or investment in agriculture till 1991 with the trend of agricultural growth. Sometimes they can ask you to discuss the role after 1991 with the trend in agricultural growth. Sometimes they can ask you to compare that how has the agricultural growth trend showed variation before 91 and after 91, how far do you think public investment in agriculture plays a role in it? You understand that? So all these possible questions always remain from this kind of a topic. That if they ask you, they can ask you one of these things to compare and so on. So be careful on that account. I have some of your friends asking me questions like agro-tourism and farm stay beneficial. Yes, you can apply all that, but long run it has to be more and more productivity in agriculture. Perfect, Ankit. Yes, no one is private here now, no doubt. I hope you got the PA and PI thing, Amit. Now there is another thing that Bhargavi asks me, excess capacity was created by earlier investment by government, can be a reason. Remember, excess capacity was not in agriculture. Agriculture still had a lot to offer. Excess capacity was for industries with roads and all built up, but rural India, agricultural India still needed a lot of investment. So excess capacity was not in agriculture, so don't take it as a reason due to which investments floundered in agriculture. Actually, the problem was that the 4 points that I made you right, with the IMF reforms, government knew that they cannot give subsidy and investment both. So then they choose that, okay, we'll keep giving subsidy, and maybe we will increase it, and investments maybe we can compromise upon. All right, so keep that as the major factor of 90s to 2005. All right. I hope most of you are asking me about IMF conditions. We will be discussing it. Shaista, don't worry, when I teach you India after 91. All right, another question I'm asked is that how can we dispense selected benefits for marginalized farmers? Venkatesh, I'll answer this question for you, but you'll have to wait for this. That how do we do distribution better? Public expenditures have a crowding in effect. You can take that, love. I hope you heard me, Devashish, about what type of questions can be asked, because there is a 40-second gap between me and you. Okay. Now, you take the next thing up. Yeah, yeah. So, if you see that, terms of trade shifting in favor of agriculture was a mistaken thinking, because terms of trade can shift in favor of agriculture, and the real beneficiaries can be agricultural traders rather than farmers per se. So that is what was happening in India, has been happening in India. I mean, if you go back to before 91, even farmers in richer area of India like Punjab, etc., would have tractors. It all started shifting to more cars and then BMWs and Audis post 91. So that structure started changing as few started getting rich because of the terms of trade shifting in favor of agriculture in those days. All right. Then you write the next thing up, you change the paragraph, you write, now you give a heading on that, 2005 to 2015. What about? Private investment, as I told you, was the dominant factor. Yeah, 90 to 2005, private investment was 80% of total agricultural investment. All right, that's what you wrote also. That if you were investing 10%, 80% was private investment. All right. Productivity remains low mainly because private investments would be done by big farmers for their own purposes and sometimes for extracting more resources than generating them. For example, I can over extract water, I can overuse fertilizer, I can over mulch my land, and that will reduce productivity rather than increasing it. Again, Punjab is a very good example of that. That when I overutilize my resources, I reduce the productivity of my land. All right. Industry. Yeah. Yeah, it was not. It was not, definitely. Yes, yes. So you look at agriculture growing at 2.5% and food grain production reaching 200 million tons by 2001. Because industry was doing better, no? Terms of trade don't decide your growth rate. Terms of trade decide relative price share. But my growth rate was much faster in industries. Industries were recording a growth rate of 9% in 1990s. So obviously the share of industry would then zoom up. Yeah, terms of trade is just the price ratio. All right. Okay, you please take this now. You write, after Swaminathan Commission recommendation, this is 2005 to 15, after Swaminathan Commission recommendations, public investment in agriculture increased to public investment in agriculture increased to 12% of agricultural GDP, 12% of agricultural GDP by 2014, and it also crowded in private investment in agriculture which reached 9% of agricultural GDP. So the total investment now in agriculture was 21% of agricultural GDP. All right. So which reached 9% of agricultural GDP. Full stop. The average agricultural growth, In this time period, average agricultural growth in this time period was recorded at slightly above 4%, full stop. Public investment was in crop protection. Public investment was in crop protection, comma, rural road development, comma, cold storage chain development, and warehousing facility development. Full stop. Private investment was mainly observed in agri-business activities. Agri-business activities focus on linkages, connecting wholesaler to retailer, making sure you make a market connect quickly, making sure you have warehousing of your own. All right, that is agri-business activities. So agri-business activities, comma, purchase of equipment, and creating personal irrigation source. This, after a full stop, you write, this period recorded high agricultural growth backed by higher agricultural exports, in a bracket you write $43 billion in 2014. The agricultural exports had reached $43 billion in 2014. And high agricultural commodity price. Then you give a heading 2015 to 2018. You write public investment marginally declined to 9% of agricultural GDP. Public investment marginally declined to 9% of agricultural GDP, and private investment also declined to 7% of agricultural GDP. It was mainly due to and you write it as A and B. So you write A, reduced price of agricultural commodities, So this was the reason which reduced private investment, that agricultural commodities became cheaper, people found it less profitable and reduced private investment. And B, more focus of government on large infrastructure project. So this was the reason why government investment slipped down a little. Government thought that if we do a Bharat Mala, and if we do a Sagar Mala, and if we do a Gram Sadak Yojana, then in totality things will improve on their own. But that was not materializing. So in the same thing you write, agricultural growth, and whenever I say agricultural growth, I mean real GDP. Agricultural growth in this time period declined. Agricultural growth in this time period declined to less than 3% per annum, in spite of normal monsoon. Full stop. Significant reduction was observed in post-harvest facilities. I hope you understand the post-harvest facility part now. Post-harvest facility like storage, marketing and all that. Post-harvest facilities which led to higher wastage and lesser value realization. Value realization is money in the hands of the farmer. That is called value realization. किसान के हाथ में कितने पैसे आए. So lesser value realization for the farmers. Then you write 2018 to 2022. 2018 to 2022. Now you know, Economic Survey of 1718 was highlighting that we need to increase investment in agriculture. Government took cognizance of that and again increased investment in agriculture. So you write, public investment in agriculture reached 12% of agricultural GDP, private investment has not fully picked up and it is 8% of agricultural GDP, but the sector has grown above 4% per annum, even recording a growth of above 5% in 2020-21. This has been mainly due to better storage, higher MSP and improved productivity in India. Change the paragraph and write, overall, two conclusions can be derived. One, higher public investment crowds in private investment. Mainly by reducing cost of doing business. So this is one trend, that higher public investment will crowd in private investment. And two, higher investment in general and higher public investment in particular increases growth rate of agricultural GDP in India. All right. Wherever I see a question mark from you, but no question, if you could just repeat that, please. 80 to 90, private sector 25%, public sector 75%. That was the composition, Anushka. Agro-tourism we will discuss later. I think this is not the right time. We'll discuss it when we talk about doubling farmers' income. All right, licensed trading in APMC and all, Yashasvi, we will be discussing it. You'll have to wait till I teach you India after 91. All these things I'm dictating to you, Anvesha, not the handout. All right. The handouts don't have India after 2000, kind of. Okay. Yes. Because agriculture, okay, I'm answering a question that why in spite of such huge growth in investment, agricultural growth doesn't go beyond 4%. Because remember, everything will have a productivity capacity. Natural resources extraction can have only that much capacity. All right, like if you convert, like as I keep saying, that you grow potato and then the revenue you get and make a chips out of that potato and then the revenue you get and trade in that potato and then the revenue you get. So that is the revenue disposition. That decides your growth rate, actually. All right. Now see, I'm starting one more discussion with you. There are two left, so one by one we'll finish them. So one more discussion with you, which they have asked a question in the past, they can ask again. This is evolution of economic structure between 1951 to 1991, or we will keep it till 2021, but this discussion I will do with you later. I will give you data till 2021, but I will be doing this discussion with you slightly later. So 51 to 91 is what we are living with at the moment for analysis purposes. So I'm giving you some numbers, and again, what does that mean when I use the word evolution? Economic structure, the income structure, and the occupational structure. How GDP percentage was divided and how occupational structure was divided. All right. So I'm giving you a number there. So again, if we take agriculture, industry, and services, And we will take our reference points. So 1951, 1971, 1991, and 2021. These are our reference points that we take, each of the census years. And what I'm doing is, I'm writing percentage share in GDP, percentage share in GDP, and in the bracket, जो मैं येलो में लिखूंगा, वो है occupational structure, percentage share in workforce. All right, so we will be putting percentage share in GDP, and within bracket, in yellow, I will keep writing what was the percentage share in workforce. Like, I'll give you an example. Suppose for 1951, if we say that agriculture had 53.1%, industry had 17%, services had 29% contribution to GDP, then agriculture occupied 73%, industry occupied 10%, services occupied 17%. This is occupational structure. All right, what percentage of workforce was occupied in which sector? And in white, I am writing the GDP share. I hope I am clear to everyone. मैं जो कर रहा हूँ मैं फिर से एक बार रिपीट कर दूं, ये जो मैं लिख रहा हूँ व्हाइट से, ये जीडीपी का शेयर है, टोटल सेक्टर्स का शेयर है जीडीपी में, और जो ये येलो ब्रैकेटेड टर्म्स हैं ये बता रहे हैं कि ऑक्यूपेशनल स्ट्रक्चर किस तरह से डिवाइडेड था, किस सेक्टर का के लोग कितने एम्प्लॉयड थे कहाँ पे. सो परसेंटेज शेयर इन द वर्कफोर्स in yellow and percentage share in GDP in white. All right, then by 1971 we see that share of agriculture had become 42%, industry had become 24%, and services had become 34%. This was the situation by 1971, 42, 24 and 34. By 1991, share of agriculture was 29%, share of industries was almost 30% by now, 28%, and share of services was 43%. And then we see a drastic change by 2021, that share of agriculture drops to 17%, share of industry remains stagnant at 30% almost, and share of services rises to 53%. So this is in GDP structure, that what percentage of GDP was in each of these sectors. If I go into the occupational structure mode, in occupational structure, the share of agriculture showed no major decline. It remained 68% till 1971. The share of industries also showed not a major increase, 12%, and for services, it was 20%. So we did not see a major change in occupational structure of India over 20 years. All right, the people in agriculture, they almost remained in agriculture. We didn't see the percentage changing much. Even till 1991, we didn't see a major change. 65% were still in agriculture, suggesting that agriculture was the major employer in India. All right, in industries, it was 14%. So now there was some extra employment that industries were creating. Services, it was 21%. And by 2021, we see that agriculture now has 46.5%, industries have approximately 27%, and services have 26%. So last 30 years, the share of industry in the workforce has increased quite a bit, and agriculture has declined quite a bit. That is one thing we have seen last 30 years. The share of industries has gone up. It has gone up from 14 to 27. Share of agriculture has come down. But still, in spite of all the hype that we have created, almost half of India is in agriculture, which is a little too much for comfort. And the big reason is we are not absorbing people here. Ideally, this should have been the absorption place, that this should have been 40-odd%. That's not happening in our country, and that is a separate debate. 91 to 2021, I will do the debate with you in a lot of detail when I'm talking India after 91 to you. Right now, we will keep the debate confined to this time period as to what was happening and why was it happening. All right, we will mainly focus on that. 53%. Yes, yes, yes. I'll just make it better. All right. I'm doing an analysis with you again. The basic features of these changing structures in India. This is a question that UPSC has asked you once, and they can ask you again. All right, that what are the basic features of these changing structures in India? How did the structure change? What are the features of it? So you please take it down. You write features of changes in economic structure of India. Feature of changes of economic structure of India. Subsidy for micro irrigation is not public investment. Gridarshan, I'm answering your question. We are classifying these time periods mainly on decadal idea or changes, significant changes across them. Public investments crowd in private investments by reducing cost of production. You can go back to my discussion on talks on crowding out and crowding in, Tanvi, on crisis in Indian economy before 91. You will find it over there. This is for 18 to 22. Subhashmita, I'm answering your question. LPG subsidies, liberalization, privatization, globalization को कहते थे वैभव, पर वो सब्सिडीज अलग थी, वो रिफॉर्म्स अलग थे. और जो एलपीजी सिलेंडर की सब्सिडी की बात तुम पूछ रहे हो, वो एक अलग बात है. उन दो चीजों को मिक्स ना करें तो बेहतर होगा. ऑल राइट. You can see crowding in concept discussion, Simran, in our talk on India before 91. Check on that. You might have missed the class. We talked about how crowding in takes place. All right. No, warehouses don't go away. They are reduced in capacity, Sujoy. Okay, let's see. Yes, occupational structure was sticky till 91. Now, what are the main features that we see in this? Yes, yes. Because industries were growing much faster, so did services. The contribution can fall even if other sectors are doing well. So 71 to 81 was retrogression. If I would have taken 81 data, we would have seen industries did not do that well. But between 81 to 91, industries grew tremendously well, and so did services, if you recall our trend discussion. So that is in fact the effect of LPG. I mean, I'm talking about lack of industrial share increase and more service sector share increase. That is due to LPG. We didn't play our cards well with respect to industrial growth in India. We still don't. You know, and I'll teach you that why industries did not grow well in India and why services did well in India. You become an agricultural superpower, but end of the day, you will still have to focus more on value addition, which only industries can do. Look at Australians or look at Brazilians in the initial days. Now Brazil is not doing that good, but look at Australia. They are an agricultural superpower, but they have not ignored their industries, because unless you don't do value addition, somebody else will do it for you, and that country will become much better off than what you would do. If I am producing milk and I am producing potato and I am producing tomato and you are the one who is processing them, then you will surely be richer than me. So it's important that I produce these things and I process these things in my country, and that makes me better off. Plus, don't forget the dynamics of India. That is for all of you to keep in mind. When I say dynamics of India, when people say either this or this, no, we can have growth in all because we have scope in all of these. हम इतने बड़े देश हैं और अभी तक एक गरीब देश हैं, तो हमारे पास स्कोप हर चीज के लिए ही है. They won't come in contradiction. It's not that if I focus on industry, I have to ignore agriculture or I have to ignore services. They can complement each other. And all of them can grow together. ये choices तभी आती हैं जब आप अपने PPC के बहुत close होते हैं. If you are very close to production possibility curve, then you make a choice that, oh, whether I focus on that or I focus on this. We are far below and our PPC has a scope to shift to the right so much. So I think in Indian context, when we talk like that, we are a little premature talking like that. India has, again, I repeat, a lot of scope to grow. It's like तुम सोचो अपनी यूपीएससी की तैयारी में कि मैं इकोनॉमिक्स पढूं या ज्योग्राफी पढूं. भाई साहब तुम कुछ नहीं ज्यादा जानते अभी. तो तुम्हें बैठ के सब पढ़ना पड़ेगा. और ये तुम्हारे ईगो को हर्ट करने के लिए नहीं कह रहा, पर ये सच्चाई है. तुम जितना पढ़ते जाओगे देखोगे मैं उतना जानता जा रहा हूं. तो तुम चॉइस कैसे कर सकते हो कि मैं ये पढ़ूं या वो पढ़ूं, या ये मेरा पढ़ने का टाइम नहीं है. चॉइस ही नहीं है तुम्हारे पास. ये मैं अपनी बात भी तुम्हें कह रहा हूं. I have never been able to make a choice till now, and I will be 48 in another 4-5 odd months, but I've never been able to make a choice till now that which book do I have to read and which book I don't have to. There's so much to read. So even if I read 6 hours in a day, some days I make it, not every day, because most of the days I'm taking 8 hours class and 3-4 hours research, but even if I'm doing 4-5 hours of reading in a day, it's still I feel short of having done my work. I feel I should have been reading more. Because there is, again I repeat, so much to read around me. तो इसीलिए बोल रहा हूँ कि जब हम अंडर डेवलप्ड हैं तो हमारे लिए तो जरूरी है हम हर जगह ही फोकस करें, डेवलप करें. हाँ, फोकस का तरीका क्या होना चाहिए ये मैं आपको सिखाऊंगा इंडिया आफ्टर 91 में, बट एक हिंट दे देता हूँ आपको. इफ आई डेवलप इंडस्ट्रीज इन इंडिया, देन द लिंकेजेस टू एग्रीकल्चर एंड लिंकेजेस टू सर्विसेज आर बोथ वेल established. So again the key lies in developing industries in India. If I develop good textile, good footwear, good toys, good shoes, and say good say electronic industry, good electrical appliances, then obviously these industrial growth will mean people need more banking, people will need more insurance, people will need more software to be written, people will need more trading, transportation, services would grow. And if I am developing good food processing, good textile, etc., agriculture would grow. As people become rich, they may demand less wheat and less rice. When I say less, I mean qualitatively. And they may demand more of high-value products like flowers and fruits and so on and so forth. That can make agriculture become more high-value creation and more upgraded. And as my industry does better, it will create better equipments, better raw material, better inputs for agriculture, which will upgrade agriculture. So they are not again in isolation कि एक ग्रो करेगा तो दूसरा नहीं ग्रो करेगा. लेकिन इंडस्ट्री को फलक्रम बनाना होगा क्योंकि इस फलक्रम से सर्विस भी ग्रो करेंगे, एग्रीकल्चर भी. अगर मैं सर्विस पे फोकस करूंगा तो एग्रीकल्चर का सर्विस से जो लिंकेज है वो वीक है, और अगर मैं एग्रीकल्चर पे फोकस करूंगा तो सर्विस का एग्रीकल्चर से लिंकेज वीक है. तो ये मैं आपको सिखाऊंगा, बट आई होप द हिंट इज अंडरस्टूड by you. But that's my job, I'll teach you that. But that is the way to think about how we develop India for future development, growth. Okay, we take this up then. You write, first point. No. I'll tell you why. Think, I get your point, ratio of people employed. Sometimes what can happen is that there can be a labor-intensive sector with high-paying jobs, attracting more people, and therefore the ratio less favorable. And there can be another sector which can apply, like I'll give you an example better. So take US, 1% people are in agriculture, and agriculture contributes 1% to GDP growth. Now that gives you a ratio of 100%. You see that? On the other hand, around 83% people are in services, 88% people, and that gives a GDP of a contribution of 83%. But still services is a much high-paying job in US compared to agriculture. You understand that? That ways you can understand it. All right. Take this up then. You write the first point. The share of agriculture has consistently decreased between 1951 to 1991 comma, due to relatively faster growth in industry and services, full stop. Agricultural share declined to 42% of GDP, make it 41%, sorry. Agricultural share declined to 41% of GDP by 1966, but due to Green Revolution, which increased food production drastically, the share stabilized at 42% in 1971. सेकेंड पॉइंट यू राइट, मैं पहले आपको तीन चार पॉइंट्स दे रहा हूं इनकम स्ट्रक्चर पे और फिर 2-3 पॉइंट दूंगा ऑक्यूपेशनल स्ट्रक्चर पे. ऑलराइट, आई एम डूइंग इट लाइक दैट. इन केस दे सेपरेटली आस्क यू क्वेश्चंस ऑन इनकम स्ट्रक्चर एंड ऑक्यूपेशनल स्ट्रक्चर, यू शुड हैव योर पॉइंट्स रेडी. So second point, you write, between 1971 to 1991, agricultural share kept declining with rise in rural industrialization, comma, increased productivity of capital goods industry, comma, rise in high value services, like space research, comma, nuclear energy, comma, banking, etc. After a full stop, you write, overall agricultural production continuously increased for example, food grain production reached 150 million tons by 1991, 150 million tons by 1991, comma, oilseed production more than doubled between 1985 to 1997. Oilseed production more than doubled between 1985 to 1997, and milk production increased 3 times increased 3 times between 1971 and 1998. Next point you write. Share of industries it was mainly White Revolution, Operation Flood. Yes, dairying was a part, but that was White Revolution as we call it. You write, share of industries increased at a fast pace between 1951 to 1971 because of large scale investment by government in capital goods industry where major contribution was observed through metals and minerals, comma, petroleum refinery, comma, automobile, industrial rollers, ROLLERS, they're big industrial machines, industrial rollers, railway wagon building, steel and cement, railway wagon building, steel and cement, full stop. Small scale industries did not record high growth in this time period. And change the paragraph and write in the same point, the period between 71 to 91 saw lesser increase. The period between 71 to 91 saw lesser increase in industries, industries with apostrophe, share, lesser increase in industries share due to retrogression of 1970s. Retrogression of 1970s. And then again change the paragraph or write the next point. Service sector increased its share. Next point. Service sector increased its share between 1951 to 1971 due to fast increase in transportation. And in transportation, if you ask me, it was mainly roadway and railway. All right, like in case somebody asks you in an interview that which part of service sector, transportation was growing. So roadway and railway. Airways were not growing as much, and waterway we had almost blocked after 1950s because the focus had shifted to roadways. All right, waterways were not in picture. Later on, by 1970s, environmental considerations came in and waterways were further blocked. We also did not have technology for water connectivity in waterways at a larger speed. So we thought that, okay, we will focus on roadways. And mind you, Britishers had hardly developed roads in India, which meant that when India started developing its road, it came out as a major challenge, and the government thought, let's meet this, and then we will think about the other things. All right. So roadway development was a lot focused upon. In fact, whenever you will read, you will see from first 5-year plan till 7th 5-year plan, in fact, 8th 5-year plan too, roadways will always be among top 3 expenditure parts. ये टॉप 3 एक्सपेंडिचर किसी को डिवोट किया जाता था तो रोडवे जरूर होते थे उसमें. All right, so that is how we were spending money effectively. So in the same thing, transportation, communication, internal trade, again remember, external trade was discouraged a lot, but internal trade was happening decently in India. Why? During the British period, we were a segmented market, as in princely states and British governed India, and then some independent areas. So now some areas under Portuguese, some under the French. So now government was trying to integrate these areas by developing trading patterns and trading trading rules so that it can be a unified national market. Of course, unless we didn't have a GST, a single tax all across India, we can't think about a unified national market. And even today, different state governments have their own rules and regulations for different things. So unified national market is still not there in India, but to a great extent, the government was trying that at least the segmentation can be controlled. That was promoting internal trade. The wholesaling ka business, retailing ka business, unki connectivity aapas mein, that's what was being focused upon. That okay, develop a wholesale business, retail business, connect them well. That was the basic idea here. In the same thing, you write, you wrote internal trade, yeah, put a comma, improved services on broadcasting. Remember, this was the time when we launched the satellite, and for the first time, Doordarshan started becoming a reality on many homes in India. All right, so that was 1960s actually, that we launched our first satellite, and the idea was that then that way you reach every drawing room of the country. All right, that was again the basic idea. तो दूरदर्शन की शुरुआत हुई इस तरह से, और जो प्रसार भारती थे वो establish हुए. So again, radio channels, television channels, they started playing their own role. Also remember, this was a time when government would control most of the communication, even broadcasting, and that is why investments by governments would be much more than investment by private sector. All right, things like private FM channels or things like a cable TV were unheard of. That was the thing to keep in mind. You write in that. So after trade, you write with improved services. You wrote broadcasting? Okay, services as broadcasting and improved services on governance activities like public administration. ये बहुत खर्चा करना पड़ता था हमें इसमें, एक्सपेंशन करना पड़ता था. India needed a lot of expansion for things like public administration because British didn't used to govern the rural areas and British wouldn't be bothered about the princely states. So as we became unified, we had to be bothered about all of these. And that meant setting up more block development offices, setting up more district offices, creating new districts. You understand that? And then putting officers into that. So that was the growth of public administration in India. I keep telling this story many times. That in 1979, when Morarji Desai ji had a plane crash, helicopter crash, he was the prime minister of the country. He was going to visit an air force facility in Chandipur on sea, Orissa, and his helicopter crashed in between, in Orissa itself, but around 10 minutes away from the place, the air force operation place. Now Morarji Desai ji was accompanied by his son Jayanti Lal and the helicopter pilot. The pilot died immediately. Jayanti Lal was badly injured. Morarji sir survived. He did survive long. He died at the ripe age of 99. You know, so he comes out of that. And the helicopter was in a pit. तो वो वहां से मैं आपको समझा ये स्टोरी इसलिए सुना रहा हूँ कि आप समझें कि गवर्नेंस की पहचान की क्या हालत थी इंडिया में. तो मोरारजी देसाई जी जो प्रधानमंत्री हैं वो निकल कर आए पिट से बाहर और वॉक करके पास के गांव तक गए. इस बीच में 15 मिनट निकल गए थे. सो एयरफोर्स वाज ऑन अलर्ट दैट द प्राइम मिनिस्टर इज मिसिंग फॉर 15 मिनट्स. सो वेयर इज द हेलीकॉप्टर? बट व्हेन ही रीचेस द विलेज नोबडी रिकॉग्नाइजेस हिम. सो ही टेल्स द पीपल आई एम द प्राइम मिनिस्टर ऑफ दिस कंट्री. You know, now people don't understand what is he talking. They make him sit on a bench because they saw an old man suffering in trouble. So they said, okay, you sit. They go to the nearby post office to call the postmaster over there because he was the only educated person around who could have come and verified Morarji Ji. And they didn't know what he is talking. Prime Minister का ठीक से मतलब भी नहीं समझ पा रहे थे कि क्या बात कर रहे हैं. अच्छा लेकर आओ इनको. तो वो जो पोस्टमास्टर जनरल आए उन्होंने भी देखा. उन्होंने बोला देखिए मैंने आपको कभी देखा नहीं है तो मैं जानता नहीं हूँ कि आप ही हैं या नहीं, बट कोई बात नहीं, आपको चोट बहुत लगी हुई है तो हम लोग कुछ करते हैं, आपका कुछ इंतजाम करते हैं. और वो मोरारजी देसाई जी बार बार कह रहे थे कि मैं तो फिर भी ठीक हूँ, माय सन इज इन ट्रबल. उनको निकालिए जाकर डेबरी से बाहर. Now in 20-25 minutes the air force could track him that the prime minister is debris is here. और जब डेबरी के पास पहुंचे तो फिर पास के गांव तक पहुंचे. प्राइम मिनिस्टर को रेस्क्यू कर लिया गया, उनके बेटे को भी बचा लिया गया. दिस स्टोरी वाज टोल्ड टू मी बाय द देन चीफ सेक्रेटरी ऑफ ओडिशा whom I had met in one of the interview panels. तो वो ये कहानी मुझे सुना रहे थे कि ये सरकार की हालत थी कि सरकार को ही लोग नहीं पहचानते थे क्योंकि सरकार थी ही नहीं. ना वैसा कोई टेलीविजन था, ना अखबार थे, ना रेडियो था उस तरह से. तो प्रधानमंत्री गायब हो गए, कहीं पाके पहुंच रहे और बोल रहे मैं प्रधानमंत्री हूं और लोग समझ नहीं रहे हैं कि यही प्रधानमंत्री हैं. उस बात को लेकर वाद विवाद हो रहा है कि है या नहीं. सो दैट शोज आवर लेवल ऑफ गवर्नेंस. रिकॉल द एक्सप्लॉइट्स एट चंबल. Why would you see that those ravines would burn in those days? क्यों इतने rebels निकलते थे वहां से? क्योंकि governance नहीं था. So if you don't have governance, you will have rebels around. So that is why I'm highlighting to you that public administration was a bad requirement. बहुत देर तक भी लोग नियम, कानून इनकी बात नहीं समझते थे. आज भी भारत में बहुत जगह नहीं समझते. I'll quickly tell you because I've remembered that occasion and I'll keep smiling and you will think that my illness is making me lose it. You know, my father used to be a criminal lawyer and एक बार उनके पास एक आदमी आया. मैं बच्चा था, 10-11 साल का होगा शायद या 9 साल का, खेल रहा था उनके पास और एक आदमी आया. लेकिन वो बात मुझे आज भी अच्छे से याद है. This fellow sits in front of my father and says that I am in trouble and somebody has told me that you are from our village, you will help me. And my father said, what happened? He said, look, there was my neighbor and he would keep troubling me. वो मेरे भैंस को खोल के ले जाते थे बार बार और मुझे बहुत तंग करते थे. मेरा भैंस लौटाते भी नहीं थे. अब मुझे एक दिन गुस्सा आ गया, so I cut his head as I got angry. And now the police is troubling me, they are harassing us. Harassing us is the word. पुलिस हमें परेशान कर रही है. That was the language he was using. He said, police is harassing us. They come to our place every day. They pick up my brother, they pick up my father. So somebody said that you will help me out on this. God knows what police got to do between me and my neighbor. You know, that was the thought process. क्या ठीक है, उन्होंने भैंस खोल ली, मैंने गर्दन खोल दी. तो ये thought process चल रहा था इतने दिनों तक. That is how things would go. Now this is trouble because that means people are not understanding there is something called rule of law. There is something called constitution. You got to abide by that. There is something called government. You understand that? So that, and this trouble you will see even today in India with respect to public administration. बहुत जगह है जहाँ पुलिस जो है वो नहीं जाते कुछ गाँव के अंदर. तो वो एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन का डर हुआ ना फिर तो, कि एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन ही डरे हुए हैं कि मैं जाऊंगा तो पता नहीं क्या कहेंगे ये लोग. तो ये गलत हो जाता है एक नेशन को रन करने के लिए. बट दिस वाज आवर challenge when we had become independent and therefore a lot of expenditure on public administration in India that kept happening. All right, next then you write, change the paragraph. Yeah. Yeah. Yes, because the challenge was so huge. Imagine when we became independent, there were many places where there was nothing called a government. So you have to run that challenge. You see that, like the challenge itself is huge. You go on spending and it goes on expanding. No, the share was rising, but there was so much needed that the share could keep rising. The share is rising even today, if you ask me. All right, then you In fact, that is why I don't believe in what neoliberals have to say. The neoliberals say that government has a less role in an economy. They are grossly incorrect. Government has a huge role in the economy. The right role has to be identified, which I will again teach you. But government has a huge role in the economy. So the neoliberalism fails there in not realizing that you can't have an economy without contract enforcement, and you can't have contract enforcement because without the arbitrating authority. And that arbitrating authority itself is government. Who else will arbitrate? So there are issues with liberalism, at least in Indian context. That's there in American context also, but in Indian context. So ये तो हमारी requirement ही है, बढ़ाना ही पड़ेगा. All right. You then write the next point, or rather change the paragraph and write, between 1971 to 1991, between 1971 to 1991, service sector was growing. Service sector was growing faster than the other two sectors. Faster than the other two sectors due to banking, telecom, retail services, and growth of real estate services, mainly in Western India. Mainly in Western India. Mainly it was Bombay where it was growing a lot, real estate. Navi Mumbai, Thane, and etc. were growing. Delhi was growing. So these areas in Delhi that you see, the northwestern Delhi, Rohini and all kind of areas, Noida and all getting established. So these were all areas that were getting established with a lot of real estate boom. Gurugram was established, DLF was getting all the plots and they were developing it. So real estate was growing at a very fast pace in 70s, 80s and early 90s. All right, that was a big booming period for real estate. Then you give a heading now. You write occupational structure. Like these were all points on income structure. Agriculture, industry, services, the trend. Then occupational structure. First point in that you write, there was static structure between 1951 to 1971, where proportion of population in agriculture remained almost same, full stop. It did not change significantly. It did not change significantly between 1971 to 1991, full stop. The share of industry remained lesser than services, consistently in this time period. Change the paragraph and write, large proportion of workforce was in agriculture due to following reasons. And again, you take them as A, B, C, D. So you write A, lack of training, which could make the workers, lack of training, which could make the workers get absorbed, lack of training, which could make the workers get absorbed in other sectors. Second, lack of connectivity. I hope you understood the lack of training part. Unskilled, not having enough education, so not in a position to get absorbed in industry or services. Second, lack of connectivity and information resulted in large incidents of disguised unemployment, So less connectivity to the city, less information about alternative work. So people would keep piling up on land, even though they were not productively employed, they were disguisedly unemployed. Disguised unemployment is hidden unemployment. What is that? Supposedly I am working, but my productivity or my contribution to total product is zero, or my marginal product is zero. All right, so that is disguised unemployment. And that was again prevalent in agriculture in those days. Third, you write, poor development of infrastructure discouraged growth of business in rural areas. Poor development of infrastructure discouraged growth of business in rural areas. So, roads missing or electricity missing. So obviously there was no rural industrialization. So no question that people could have shifted very easily from one sector to another. And another one, you write, spread of technological revolutions improved agricultural income. Spread of technological revolutions, that is green revolution, white revolution, that's technological revolution, improved agricultural income and played a role in restricting the shift from agriculture. So these were the factors where people got stuck up in agriculture. Now, there were again reasons why industrial share did not rise as much. All right, that why industrial share did not rise as much in the overall occupational structure. For your mind getting tired, this is the last discussion that I have to do with you at the moment. It's hardly 3 points. I'll get over and I'll say a bye-bye to you. So you just write it as second point there. या आप सिर्फ पॉइंट लिख लो, मैं आज के लिए आपको छुट्टी दे सकता हूँ. मैंने सोचा नहीं था कि मैं इस टॉपिक में जाऊंगा आज, तो मैं आपके साथ चीटिंग नहीं करता हूँ. You write the second point, just write the point and we'll stay on that. You write, share of industries remained low due to following reasons. We'll talk about the reasons tomorrow. I again repeat once, I will need not more than 1 hour tomorrow to finish the leftover portion in Indian economy. So we will begin with micro from tomorrow, and I will begin with consumer behavior, utility functions, cardinal utility. All right, Marshallian utility and all is where I'll begin. All right. Unfortunately, due to the holiday in the photostat shop and all, we couldn't get your notes today. The notes will be uploaded by tonight, And the hard copy you can receive here tomorrow. You will be getting it, the micro notes. All right. So tomorrow we'll begin with micro. After 1 hour of class, we'll get over with these things. Thank you and have a great day. So they are not immediately showing it, but if you look at these people who reported themselves in agriculture, then these people were disguisedly unemployed also. All right, it was not reflecting it immediately. I'll just take 1 second. Workforce gives you a better understanding, Ritu, about who are working. The data that we are using, Sukhmeen, you can check it in survey also, and this is data also used by MOSPI, Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation. Your hotel, teaching, these are all retail services. Correct, Aman? Oh, he had cut the head of the person of his neighbor, and then that neighbor was taking away the buffalo of the person, Lipakshi. I said that actually. Perfect. Thank you, all of you. Thank you, Dipanshi. Thank you, Venkatesh. Thank you, Vaibhav. Thank you, Isha. Thank you, Simran. Yeah, technological revolution means green, white, yellow, etc. Thank you, Parmeet. Yes, yes. किसमें specific as in? Oh, acha. It depends on the strategic shift seen in investment points. Like when did investment start rising and when did it start falling? So I've picked up those points. All right. No, the rural industrialization meant that now there would be more people working, more development of industries in rural areas also, which meant the share of agriculture in GDP would go down further. Faster growth in industry will mean slower growth in agriculture. Because end of the day it's 100 rupees contributed, no? So out of that 100 rupees contributed, if suppose 100 becomes 200, and in the next 100 that gets added, industry supplies more than agriculture. Then in that case, share of agriculture will fall, no? It's share of agriculture. That is why. Okay. Thank you, Goldie. Okay, I'll just take a minute. People online, I see you tomorrow, 3 o'clock then. Thank you.